viewers at home, now in understanding why art is an important part of history, I am joined by Masai Sepuru, who's going to be sharing with us why painting is a testament to the power of art that preserves memories and honors stories, while also reminding us of the importance of honoring artists in their lifetime. After all, they say give them their flowers while they can smell them. Masai, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to Prime Live.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
Now let's take a look at your work with Telkom, that piece in particular. Can you tell us a bit on what inspired you to really come out to create that, as well as, most importantly, what specific elements did you choose to include in it and why?
That piece specifically, obviously, it is a part of a collection.
Okay.
It's not a standalone piece. Obviously, it refers and it speaks about the Telkom's thing. However, it is part of a collection that seeks to document and give context to Black history. I think Black history for a very long time, the story is being told through the lens of struggle, through the lens of pain, because we have gone through a lot as a country, as Black people. But however, there's some moments, some quiet moments that add context, that adds value, that add the plot, add to the plot of what it means to be Black. And once you add those plots in combination with the stories that I've been telling, because they're all important, in combination of that, then you sort of get the entirety of Black people, and you stop seeing them as a concept, but just seeing them as people. I think that's very important. For us to move forward, we have to see ourselves as people. You know what I mean? Not a consequence of something else. So in order for us to achieve that, we have to tell the story in its entirety. And that's sort of where my art comes in, to excavate those moments, to excavate those quiet, those rarely, if ever, interrogated moments. Because they are so simple, they're so fleeting, we never consider them until some extreme thing happens, So I am trying to document the quiet, the nostalgia, moments like that. They fill the plot holes to tell the story of Black people, Black people in townships, in cities, in villages. So to answer your question, adding on to the Telkom thing, as I chose specifically that payphone, the public phone, because we can all relate, you know what I mean? We know what that means, we know what value it carried in a society, what value it carried in a community, and what importance it had, in moments of longing, in moments of celebration, and also in moments of emergency. We know where to go and how much it costs to call an ambulance because someone's water break, you know what I mean? Or call a parent from far because you want to celebrate something with them. You passed, or even moments of, sadness, calling and, announcing a passing of someone. Those phones were very pivotal, very important part of one of the great pillars of a society and great pillars of a township. And we sort of, I don't want to say owe a lot, but you know what I mean. I don't have the word isn't coming to me now, so I'll use owe. So we owe a lot to that initiative, to consider that people in the township do need to communicate with people from elsewhere. So yeah, so I chose it for that reason, because we all can relate and we all can connect with it. Pun intended. Yeah.
But also, one thing just coming from what you said, I believe learning history in its true context, as you mentioned, in its depth, is quite important, because I think when you know the South African history, you're not only angry, but at the same time you're empowered and you're able to sort of celebrate. Because I mean, if we took things for the black and white as it is, it makes you somber, it makes you sad. But when you understand some of the beautiful works and how community was developed through that, how love and Ubuntu, a sense of Ubuntu, was birthed through that, it makes you now want to live on, and as you are doing it through art and creating that legacy. But just coming back to your personal experiences with Telkom's payphones, how would you say that really influenced your work?
The relationship that I have with the payphone and is me, like many other kids in the townships. My parents worked in the city. I am from Limpopo, in a place called Mahofe. It's a small part of Limpopo, and my parents worked in Gauteng. When I was growing up, and that's how I could reach out. And that's how I could, tell them about the progress of my life, and how they could find out what's going on really. You know what I mean? Going out and going as far as actually knowing the numbers by heart.
Yeah.
And I think it's a beautiful thing to say the numbers by heart, because that's exactly where the connection is from. Because, scientifically in biology we know that by our head, but when we phrase it we say we know it by our heart, because that's where it's from. You know what I mean? It's attached deeply to our our emotions, and deeply to who we are. It's an essential ingredient. You know what I mean? So knowing that number by heart, running and doing that, and also doing it publicly, there's a sense of, there's this level of vulnerability we seem to have lost as a community, because we don't get to be vulnerable in public anymore. You know what I mean? I don't get to express the affection I have for my parents or for my partner publicly anymore. Those phones didn't give you an option but to say, yeah, I love you. You know, I mean, to whisper I love you, to whisper I miss you, or to proudly say it. You know what I mean? There's something that worth looking into. You know, what did that, what did the dying out of the phones create? What vacuum? What is that vacuum? What does that vacuum look like? You know what I mean? This inability to be publicly vulnerable. You know what I mean? Now with these things of cyberbullying and other things, those things have been done privately. So I don't know if, like, I don't have an answer of, what is that vacuum.
Yeah.
My painting, my art is an attempt, to sew back, to woven back that, that severed connection. You know what I mean?
When we talk about vulnerability, I always say it's important that we sort of, when we talk about it, we're able to sort of share and understand that it's not a you thing, it's not a me thing, it's a we thing.
It's a we
It's
thing.
okay to cry. It's okay to be happy.
Yeah.
It's okay to say I love you, because that's where we should come from.
Exactly.
But I'm loving how you're putting it. And now, just in understanding the process in you creating that art, I just want to find out from you in terms of how do you go about it, like from initial idea to final product? Because now I'm thinking to myself, usually when you're meant to write an essay and you have all these ideas, you go through like the whole brainstorming phase. But then also there's so much that now keeps coming, where you have to choose, what am I putting in and what am I leaving out? So for you, in creating that art, what is the creative process from the beginning of its early stages to the final product where now people get to see it?
Lucky for me, I'm sort of like skilled in many other ways. I'm a poet, I am a playwright, I am a painter as well, I'm a director, I'm a set designer. I'm constantly in the space of art, and I'm constantly in the space of interrogating something. And it is in that it is in that interrogating, that research phase. I have conversations with people about whatever I could be interrogating. I have one play called Exodus. It deals with alcoholism and the history of it. But having that conversation about Exodus, about the play, other things sort of surface, and you can tell, like, oh, you seem to have skipped over something, and you seem to think that thing is irrelevant. Let's go back to it. You know what I mean? How did you use the cans? Like, oh yeah, we used cans to make like wheels for cars, and like, yeah, see, that's a moment you didn't pause at. You just skimmed over it, and you just kept moving. So yeah, so that's number one. For me, important is conversations during research. For my works, for my plays, for my paintings, it's these conversations. And secondly, obviously, it's dictated as such a, not that, I don't want to use the word informed. It's informed by the idea that I have for a collection. So I know what exactly it is that I want to be interrogating, so I target my focus on those things. So the whole thing obviously investigates and interrogates memory, nostalgia. So by doing that, I know that I need to look out for these moments in conversation, in research. And those who are familiar with my work know that most of my canvases are pitch black, right? And then the figures are then on top of the black, using blackness, using black bodies, using history as a canvas, you know what I mean, to lay on story, to lay on color, to lay on texture on the black, you know what I mean? I think there's something beautiful about it, because it is, black can be a canvas.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? We sort of used to canvas being white, and adding to that, I think sometimes it's better. Like if you have a black canvas, you know, now you are adding light to it, and that sort of forces you to, if it's already black, it forces you to consider the highlights. It's a very technical thing now. I'm being very technical, but it's because the canvas is black.
Yeah.
The art itself has to emphasize on highlights to show. So it is, you know what I mean? So using that as a metaphor, what are the highlights in the black history?
Ooh.
You know what I mean? So it's easier to get it, you know, on a white canvas, but on a black canvas, it forces you to want to have highlights.
You know, this conversation, I'm really loving it because it's changing my perspective on painting and my future visits to exhibitions.
Yeah.
And a lot that I've learned from you in terms of personal experience, you know, payphone, something we felt like, okay, it's just to call and connect.
Yeah.
But the way you articulate it and share about it in a personal aspect, it's a thing of it's beyond that. And just seeing how your work is more of, you know, collaborated, not based on you and how you perceive things, but how people around you also perceive things. Now, seeing that also people tend to consume what you produce through your artwork, what would you say, or what hope do you have when they are perceiving that? What response do you hope for? And most importantly, what would you say is your core message of any of your art pieces, as well as that specific telecom piece?
That's a very good question. Context, you know what I mean? I think is to reintroduce context back into the conversation.
Okay.
I think most of the time we sort of go off the what's popular in the dialogue, what gets people more, you know, wild up, you know, and context is lost completely.
Yeah.
So the art itself aims to reintroduce context, and by reintroducing context, as I said earlier, it fills the plot holes, and then it paints it paints the bigger picture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's one, you know, introducing context and having people saying this is happening because of this. You know what I mean? Or it wasn't just this that was happening. Alongside it, we used to do X, Y, and Z. And another thing that I hope you know, people take away from it is conversation. You know what I mean? These are very interesting icebreakers. You know what I mean? Amongst black people. This is something that we all relate to. And once you just mention, hey guys, remember when we used to push bricks as cars? Faces lies up. We already know what you're talking about.
Yes, don't need to explain.
Conversation has already, you know what I mean? The conversation has started, the ice is broken, and we're relating now.
Yeah.
I know that you know where I'm from. You know what I mean? And when you don't get it, it excites me even more because I get to explain to you how a brick can be a car. You know what I mean? And how I had to travel, you know, X amount of distance to make a call. You know what I mean? Like I get to show you another side of me that you didn't, unless we are exposed to this art, this side of me you wouldn't, you know, known about. And I'm like, listen, let me tell you about this time where we went there and we did this, and we called an ambulance, we called the police, we called, you know, our dads, we called our mothers, we called our grandmothers. You get to see another side of me, and I'm not telling it from struggle, and I'm not telling it from this was bad when it happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We acknowledge the lack, we acknowledge the difficulties that those circumstances were, but also we acknowledge the magic that we turned those things into. Yeah, that's a very important. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I hope people take away from it. I mean, they saw the additional of context, obviously, and additional of conversation, these icebreakers, and thirdly, relatability. You know what I mean? Like, yo, we did this, we used to do this. This is familiar to you. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's what I hope, you know, people take away from, and I hope they take the art home with them. You know what I mean? Because the young generation don't relate. They don't understand that, you know, a plastic could be turned into a school bag. You know what I mean? They're like, they can't relate. They don't get it. And this is not to like force it down, you know, their thought, but this is again going back to context, giving them context of who we are and how we were raised and how we behave the way we behave, why we value the things we value now. You know what I mean? Because we didn't have these things. We had to imagine these things. Now you guys have the privilege of having them. You're taking them for granted, you know. And we used to be very imaginative. You know what I mean? So that's what I hope people take from the paintings. I hope they take the paintings.
You know, the child in me is jumping around so much because I
yeah.
think when you're touching on the idea of relatability,
Yeah.
I love it so much because it sort of includes everyone in the conversation rather than having to go back. For example, if we take about the idea of recycling, you know, recycling, as you mentioned, we used to use cans to make wheels, amasi bottles to make cars, and plastic bags to make skipping ropes. This is recycling in its like, you know, infinite form or like early stages. But now when you now talk about throwing it, reusing it, now it sounds so like, okay, we're being fancy, but actually this has been done. Now, speaking on that sense of relatability, I want to ask you a question of why is it important that through art, you know, it is used to preserve and honor memories as well as stories?
I think art, for what it is, at least for me, is humans sort of saying that our stories don't end when we die, you know. So that's why humans sort of values art. As far back as you could look back into human history, art has always been alongside, and you wonder why. I think this is a way of saying we were here. This is what we did. This is who we are. This is who we were. You know what I mean? So art is sort of this resistance to death, this protest of death, that we existed, and we were real people, and we were expressive people. This is how we expressed ourselves. You know, even love songs. You know, like or breakup songs. This happened to me. When so an artist writes a song, that this happened to me. You know what I mean? This is now a part of me that I'm putting out into the world. I'm refusing for that to die, and so because if that part dies, context is lost, right? And whoever in the future get to look back have the right to feel whatever they want because those holes exist. So that's what art means to me, is this resistance to death. Like, no, I want to. It's our best attempt at immortality. Yeah, I think that's, you know, easily phrased. Like, art is our best attempt at immortality.
Now, Masai, to close off our conversation tonight, like, you know what, I'm like inside, I'm like jumping because I'm just loving how this new perspective of art that is now ingrained in me is really making me see like art differently, and I think it will make me approach especially black art quite differently rather than seeing, you know, the pain, the sadness, and just see beyond, as you mentioned, some of the incredible highlights. Just to close off our conversation, where and how can people get in touch with you?
Very actually quite easily accessible. My name is Masai Sepuru. That's MASAISEPURU. If you just Google that, you'll find all social media platforms that they exist there. There is a website that I'm also a part of. So yeah, I'm very easily accessible. So just Google Masai Sepuru, and you'll find anything and everything you need to know about me. I can DM me in Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, wherever. I think I'm blessed with a unique name that you will find me.
Not competing with anyone.
This is Masai Sepuru, first of his name. Yes, no.
Now, Masai, just to conclude our conversation, no, that was the last one.
Yeah.
What would you like for viewers at home to take away from our conversation tonight and also the work that you do?
Invest in art, buy art, have conversations about art, collect art. I think it's very important. If you look back at our conversations, you'll know why I say these things. You need to invest and collect and find new artists, young artists, black artists that are, you know, responsible for telling your stories. And that's another thing. We are responsible. It's a responsibility that we have to tell these stories and to tell them well. So collect art, you know, reach out, and we are eager to, you know, fill your homes, fill your office spaces with your stories, because your stories are our stories. Fair.
Masai, thank you so much, you know, for joining us tonight and really, you know, enlightening us on all things regarding art and how it can actually be used to sort of preserve history and have you feeling immortal in that sense. But thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Viewers at home, that was a lovely conversation. Hope I answered your question as to why it is important how art is important in terms of preserving our history in that sense. But viewers at home, make sure you do use his name to gain access to his socials and connect with him. After all, you got to get that art into your home.